in times of doubt. I shall keep faith.
Today I'm asking the question, are the graphics of Dawn of War 3 too cartoony? That is, are they too vivid and not gritty and dark enough for the 41st millennium? And following on from the style of art in Dawn of War 2. Here's a reminder of how Dawn of War 2 looked comparatively to Dawn of War 3. Remember also that Dawn of War 3 is still in a far from complete stage of development, so it's very likely to have more graphical passes and updates that are still going to be made. Oh, it's all kicking off in the middle here, dude, on me. That's it, come on. Oh, come up. They're coming warriors back in on that PowerPoint there, dude.
Scouts under attack. Securing area.
Our force commander has reached level 3.
Honest will be messy.
Get him, get him, get him, get him, get him! They're sending a big force here in the middle, right hand side.
Additional units have
Back here. So that shows us the difference between 2 and 3, and it's clear that there have been some changes both in the fidelity and detail, but also how the units for 3 now pop out of the screen at you. Is this a bad thing? Let's discuss that. Now I know from the early screenshots we originally saw, many people were concerned about the very vivid colour of units, meaning they didn't blend or tie in well to the background environment. Well, from the gameplay preview we can see that this next stage of artwork does not carry anywhere near the saturation of colour we saw in those preview images. Still though, they stand out more than in previous iterations. I was quite surprised though to hear how so many people commenting that this style of unit design was being considered as too cartoony or bright and not gritty enough. Now while I, of all people, as someone who takes the world of 40k very seriously, or fairly serious anyway, can understand the desire for the units of Dawn of War to be more gritty, I think at the same time it's worth remembering that we are playing an RTS and not an immersive third or first person experience here. When you consider the fact that we are viewing that game from a top down perspective, and often with a huge amount of firepower and other things happening on screen, these are elements that must be considered to ensure quality of the gameplay. It could be easy to lose track of just what unit is what, especially when you're in the middle of a huge slaughter, and especially when you consider that the focus of Dawn of War 3 is stepping up to a larger scale of battle. Now I'm not saying a more visceral style of art couldn't work, I'm just saying that I think people should try to understand the decision process and not just take the look of the game at face value. Try to see beyond that and consider why they would have left some of those units with brighter elements to help you pick out and distinguish them across a chaotic battlefield. In an ideal scenario, what I suppose we could have wished for would be an option to have enhanced or plain units, where the enhanced versions have the brighter highlighting and the standard more plain unit models are darker and blend more into the environment. And who's to say that this won't be an option? Maybe this will be something that can actually be included and we can select visibility tiering and choose how dark or vivid units appear on the battlefield for us. There's another reason as well why I think Relic have chosen this art style, and that is simply accessibility. We know that Relic want to make this Dawn of War both a game for veteran and new players alike, and maybe they just felt for clarity on the battlefield it was necessary to go with a brighter look. Again, I can understand that. And also at the end of the day, it's a subjective thing. Now me personally, I actually am not that fussed one way or the other. I know that's a bit of a cop-out answer, so sorry, not sorry, but it's the truth. If the units looked as true to real life as possible, I'd be fine with that. But a part of me would also feel like somehow it wasn't 40k, because 40k is outlandish and at times garish, as well as being a brutal quagmire of death and agony. On the other side, if the art style remains how we see it currently, I'm fine with that too. It seems to me as if it's a middle ground between tabletop units themselves and how they stand out in a very disconnected way, and a more realistic in-game stylization. Ultimately, as I've said many times, but most recently on my Division Autopsy video, graphics do not make a game. Mechanics and solid optimization make a game. If Dawn of War 3 lets us down in those other core areas, then it can look as ugly or as pretty as you like, because those things won't be what you're worrying about. If the game has so much fire and effects on screen, it isn't effectively optimized and it cripples your FPS, I'll be caring about that 100 times more than I will the colors on the units being a little too bright. Let's try and keep it real here. Graphics and the look and feel of any game are subjective, and we can always wish for our own personal preferences. But when a game is catering to thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people, you know that not everybody's going to have their own way. So learning to just accept things for what they are is sometimes better than letting it burn into you and fester away. Now again, I can hear people already standing up and shouting at me, but listen, okay, this is not the same as being critical about mechanical elements, as I often am. Mechanics are critical gameplay elements, but graphics are important, but they do not make or break a game. This does lead to another concern that I heard though, was that visual reference and the sheer quantity of firepower and particles on screen could be hard for an average gaming PC to handle, not to mention it being tactically confusing, as well as, trying to discern all your units amid the chaos, as I've already said. Well, I think this is a very subjective question. While one person may want clarity of action and that kind of small design and gameplay, another may want chaos. And, this is the fact, is that we've moved away from that Dawn of War style, Dawn of War 2 style gameplay, where it's kind of more individual combat action, smaller groups into a larger scale battlefield. And so those factors do play in, and maybe that's another question for a different video. Certainly, the battlefields of 40k and concept art that we see and imagine are filled with as many units and firepower as possible, and the narratives around 40k support this. So I actually think that the preview of Dawn of War 3 gameplay was a fairly accurate depiction of how I would imagine battles in the 41st millennium. The devs are well aware that just a blind mess of firepower would not be conducive to good gameplay, that's pretty obvious. So they've tried to ensure that fire from different units and actions is distinct enough that at a glance you can see what is happening and where the most dangerous threats are located. The idea being that you can glance across the battlefield, and if you suddenly see heavy fire coming in on your forces from one direction, you may want to divert attention and units to prioritise a certain threat from your enemy, or at least reposition your force to prevent heavy losses. Doing this visually from weapons on the field instead of through prompts or other markers is a smart choice, as it means it keeps you in the game and keeps the action in fiction instead of having on-screen UI breaking your immersion. And the other thing is that, very often when you have a lot of things happening on screen, you sometimes will see things only out of your peripheral vision. Being able to make those distinctions just by the colour and shape of units rather than having to specifically focus your look onto them is going to save you time, and that'll be critical in this kind of intense mass operation RTS style game. Whatever small changes to the graphics you would personally prefer, Dawn of War 3 does look excellent. Please guys, tell me your thoughts in the comments, what style you consider best, realism or stylization. This is Luton.